Good evening. Hare Krishna. We're having experience here. Welcome to Spiritual Warriorship, where we hear and we're discussing and reading and talking and prayerfully growing spiritually from the writings of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami's Spiritual Warrior books. It's almost a year, I realize. We started November 13th, 2008. And by Krishna's mercy, it's almost that time again, and we're still here, and some of you are still there, and hopefully you've been helped. Tonight I want to give a brief reminder, Spiritual Warriorship. That's what this program is called, and what is Spiritual Warrior briefly. Bhakti Tirtha Swami states that spiritual warriors are unconventional. We do not fight with conventional weapons. We do not fight on conventional battlegrounds. And we do not fight for conventional objectives. So what do? A true spiritual warrior strives to master the weapons. These are the weapons of love, humility, compassion, faith, and self-knowledge. And what's our battleground? We said it's not a conventional battleground. Our battleground is the realm of human consciousness. And in that's why we have the knowledge. Our weapon is self-knowledge. With that knowledge, we are able to work on the battleground of human consciousness, where we wage war against ignorance and lust that now pervades human society. And our objective, it's not conventional objectives, we said. Our objective is a civilization where people live in harmony with each other and with God, and really become awakened and in tune with the spiritual environment that is available to us. So we try to develop ourselves, and we can't do that unless we're aware of what's there. If you've been listening and hearing internal, at times you must go inside. And as we endeavor to develop ourselves, we share our understanding with the people we meet. And then we can give them tools that they need to discover and experience the truth of themselves. So I'm hoping that these classes and all these spiritual warrior books we've been going through in different areas is helping. But also, Bhakti Tirtha Swami reminds us that the path of the spiritual warrior is not an easy path. It demands courage, determination, discipline, intense compassion, and unconditional love. But it also requires an understanding that this world is not the final chapter. I think it says in the scripture, this world is not our home, but we're on a mission. So I hope you out there are ready to join the ranks of our transcendental army. And I felt inclined to bring that to your attention as we keep talking spiritual warriorship. And tonight we're in Spiritual Warrior 5, Making the mind your best friend. We're in chapter 3, an attitude of gratitude. And as I've said before, if you don't have any Spiritual Warrior books, or you don't have this one, you can purchase them at Krishna.com store. They're all there and available for you. And it'd be wonderful if you're reading and following along with us and even gaining. Because really, the whole concept of these books and his bringing these concepts to us is really to help us to become grounded in knowing who we are as spiritual beings. That's the important key. And if you get grounded as who you are in a spiritual being, you can then cope with life's trials. And they're out there, aren't they? But with a good grounding, a good foundation, you can cope. So that's what we're trying to do. So, tonight, we're to speak on the area called the importance of forgiveness. But as I went through reviewing how to do this, I felt I wanted to again, and I guess it's partly me, what I feel I want to be grounded in, so that what I'm saying is coming across from a sense of knowing within myself. And the way he puts it, and it's how to understand who we are and who we're connected to, and how to work with this attitude of gratitude. I don't know how many of you out there were here last week and heard what we covered. And did you have any experiences in the week that had passed of being more mindful and attentive to having that attitude of gratitude? Did you find you were more able to say thank you for different situations, conditions in your life? Later, if you're so inclined and you want to share anything, that would be nice. But this is not, as my guru used to say, I'm not doing this for entertainment. I'm being forced and pushed, I feel, by him to present these concepts so that we can become the full spiritual beings that we really are now in this lifetime. It's so important. So an attitude of gratitude, the first instruction we receive is everything rests on the Lord. And this is what I feel I want to review, because if we don't have a sense of that importance, of that understanding, then it's not going to work. This is what he says. When we have a mindset of impoverishment and fear and do not appreciate that the Supreme Personality of Godhead either directly or indirectly arranges everything. Everything. Then it distracts from our ability to progress, and it takes away from our physical and mental senses of well-being. And such an unhealthy mental state may even lead to failure and bring many negative situations into our lives. For these reasons, he's saying we want to present this conception of gratitude, since it can counteract many of these destructive mindsets. Now, the attitude of gratitude develops through the understanding that everything rests upon the Lord. And then he quotes from Scripture, Bhagavad Gita. We've talked about that. If you have Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, and if you haven't read it recently, take it down off the shelf, blow the dust off, open it and start reading for greater understanding that everything rests upon the Lord. If you're not familiar with the Bhagavad Gita as it is, I've suggested you can go to Krishna.com. You can get it in the e-book, in the right-hand column, the e-book, or you can order one if you so desire. And they even have, I think you can now hear it audibly. So Can't get away. It's there for you if you're ready for it. And this is what he quotes from Bhagavad Gita. O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. This is the Lord speaking. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. What I want to do is read the purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Not the whole purport, but a portion of it. Sometimes when you hear from the Acharya, it clicks in, or if you hear more, or if it's been there kind of dormant, we want to awaken. Srila Prabhupada says, there is a common controversy over whether the supreme absolute truth is personal or impersonal. As far as Bhagavad Gita is concerned, the absolute truth is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And this is confirmed in every step. In this verse in particular, which we just read, where he says, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. In this verse in particular, it is stressed that the absolute truth is a person. That the personality of Godhead is the supreme absolute truth, is also the affirmation of the Brahma Samhita. That is, the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna, who is the primeval Lord, the reservoir of all pleasure, Govinda, and the eternal form of complete bliss and knowledge. Okay, you want more? Take out your Bhagavad Gita and open it. And that's chapter 7, text number 7. And the author goes on to remind us, if we really understand that all things rest upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will then try to use every circumstance in our life for growth. If we really understand. How does that understanding come about? Thinking of myself. It's by being mindful and observant, first gaining the knowledge. And if you've been studying Srila Prabhupada's books, Bhagavad Gita, and you're on the spiritual path, you have an understanding. But it becomes clearer as you experience that understanding, and you experience it by being mindful and seeing and using it, applying it in your life. And he says we will then try to use every circumstance in our life for growth when we understand. So it goes back to, I remember the earlier classes when we were studying, I remember it comes up, it's not about pointing the finger. As just in these 2 paragraphs, he talks about the Supreme Personality of Godhead arranges everything. And here he's saying if we understand that all things rest upon him, then we will use every circumstance for our growth. So it's about what they say, when you point out with 1 finger, you're pointing 3 at yourself. So it's not about pointing out, unless you're going to point out and say, I thank you for helping me to grow based on this experience. He reminds us that we can look closer at every situation in order to discover the message or lesson that we can learn. Every situation is a lesson. It's like we're in a classroom, a school of life. We had a chapter, remember, the school of love. But everything is a lesson to learn. He says it can help us to find ways to serve better or learn more about other people, the environment, and ourselves. It can also help us appreciate. Appreciation is an important factor. It helps us to appreciate the power and mercy of the Lord and understand the ways in which Maya or Satan influences us so that we can get around such obstacles. Gratitude is a valuable way to take care of our physical, mental, and spiritual states. I felt I wanted to repeat this and impress, so this is not something whimsical, this gratitude, oh yeah, thank you man, thank you. No, it's about, thank you God for bringing this about so that I can learn more about myself and my relationship to you. So what he gave us was what blocks the development of gratitude. Anybody remember what there were? There were 3 of those, right? Okay, one was the enemies of the mind. We won't go through that again. Okay, the enemies of the mind. And we've gone through, when we did Spiritual Warrior 4, remember? That is the one that talks about the enemies of the mind. The mind is your enemy, your worst enemy. And we had different tools and technologies to overcome that. So if you have Spiritual Warrior 4, you can go back and look at those. Another block to development of gratitude was lack of thankfulness. As spiritualists, we should always be in the spirit of thank you. You know how he calls us, designates us. We're spiritualists because we're understanding who we are as spiritual beings. And we're studying and gaining more knowledge, but we have to apply what we're getting. As we interact with people, we should always think and say, thank you. Thank you for helping me to see my own envious nature. Thank you for helping me to look closer at my own ego. Thank you for helping me to understand how I can act as a better parent or better person. Thank you for helping me to find ways to preach more effectively. And thank you for helping me to understand that every situation is an opportunity to serve and glorify the God. Thank you for setting a good example. So as spiritualists, we should always be in the spirit of thank you. Every situation. And this is what makes spiritual life exciting, when you're aware. And he uses mindfulness quite a bit of your situation at the moment. And if you understand, or getting an understanding, that everything rests upon the Lord, as we said, and that the Supreme Lord arranges everything. You see what I'm saying? and that you really understand that everything rests on Him, then you could look closer at the situation in order to discover the message or lesson. So that makes spiritual life, as far as I'm concerned, exciting. There's never a dull moment. There's never a moment when like, duh, what's next? No, it's like, try. This is what's next. What do I learn from this? How do I grow from this? Another block to development of gratitude that we spoke about was excessive false ego. When we have too much false ego, we will definitely not appreciate the behavior of other people when they set good examples. Okay? A mature spiritual warrior practically never thinks only of themselves. It's thinking of others and helping others. And the next set we went to was what supports gratitude. We looked at the blocks, but what supports it? What helps it? And the first one we did was selflessness. Remember that? In the higher spiritual realms, thinking solely of oneself is inimical to loving exchanges. Love never just revolves around the desires, needs, or experiences of the individual. As we genuinely honor the arrangements that God has already made, gratitude will naturally form an intrinsic part of that reflection. Gratitude also involves the appreciation of what other people have already done for you. Okay? He said, by maintaining such reflections, you will then live and imbibe so much happiness in life. And that's what we're looking for. Gratitude does not develop by carrying around too much anxiety from the past, which we then drag into the present and future. Actually, it involves learning from the past in spite of the difficulties and looking at the future in order to find ways to grow. It's about growing in consciousness, growing mentally, growing spiritually. It's our purpose for being here. We should constantly try to find more ways to reflect on the Lord and praise Him and His devotees. When we think too much about ourselves, we will disturb others, or we will have emotional, psychological, and physiological problems that will make our spiritual acceleration more complex. I like this. By increasingly honoring life as it appears in many, many forms and trying to see Krishna or God factor in all situations, because God is everywhere, His energy is everywhere, it's within us, it's in everything. Try to see it. A devotee will advance much faster and will have a more genuine sense of spiritual maturity. Okay, And the next was another support is recognizing the meaning of life. Meaning is a very important conception, he says. And if we lack gratitude, it's harder to develop significant meaning in our lives. Okay? And the next support he gave us was remove yourself from the center. We read that last week, and I do want to get on to the next, but I just felt for my own benefit of imbibing, and so I can apply it and practice it in my life. Remove yourself from the center, he says. Most importantly, we do not want to make all our evaluations with ourselves in the center. It will naturally create problems for us if we make judgments of right or wrong with ourselves as the focal point. We will end up as spiritual failures because the more we place ourselves in the center, the less we will be able to recognize Mother, Father, God as the true center. Okay, so we want to go on from here. So from that we realize, get yourself, what is that? We used to say, get yourself out the way. Something like that. And that's what that means. And who will take the place once we're out the way? The Lord himself, because he's just waiting to guide us and direct us correctly. I think this helps. He says, ironically, as devotees advance in spiritual life, the Lord will actually move them towards the center and glorify them. But in their own consciousness, they must continue to move away from the center. So you may see some people in a position where they're doing well, or even, may even be receiving honor, but they're humble about it and they're realizing how they got in that position. And then it looks like they're in the center, but it's really God in the center, in them, that's putting them in that position to get that honor and recognition. He says, wonderful things genuinely happen to them and around them because they have a sense of gratitude and deeply honor the presence of the Lord. So, the next support is called the importance of forgiveness. Are there any questions or comments up to this point on what we've... Okay. The importance of forgiveness. This is another support for developing gratitude. People often have difficulties with gratitude because they cannot forgive. Since they keep themselves too exclusively in the center, they will repeatedly reflect on the way another person spoke or acted towards them, and consequently feel that pain over and over again. However, those who deeply honor the existence of others not only forgive, but they even sometimes place the responsibility on themselves. I did that? No, they did that. Listen, they consider that their own actions have caused the other person to respond in a negative way. Therefore, they apologize to the other person for their own insufficiencies. Not only do they relinquish all grudges, but they also find themselves to be at fault or focus on their own improvements. How does that feel? When's the last time somebody said something or did something, you got upset with them, and you stopped and thought about it and asked yourself, how did that come about? Did I have any part in that exchange? I remember I went through so under his teaching, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, what I would do began to develop was a question of what in me brought that about. Because sometimes people did say, and they can at times, say some very harsh things to one. But I began to develop that, and I would journal. I don't know if you write, but I would write what the situation was, what they said, what I said, what was I feeling inside when I said what I said. And this had been helpful. I remember one time a situation, and I just kept writing about it, and eventually I said, ask the Lord to help me learn what I had to learn by that situation. And I remember writing one day, I will laugh about this, although at that time it was very painful. So again, as we said earlier, it's not about pointing the finger. And we're in this material world, we're in the age of Kali, the age of hypocrisy and quarrel. So we have to, again, I like he uses the word mindful and alert of every minute what's going on and what's going on in our consciousness, because that's our battleground as spiritual warriors. And if you're able to look within yourself, and he says, it may, those who deeply honor the existence of others not only forgive, but they even sometimes place the responsibility on themselves. Think about that. Advanced devotees have this mentality, since they have moved far away from the center and have placed the Lord there instead. When a situation seemingly opposes them, they use it for growth, for spiritual growth, for mental growth, for emotional growth. They even take responsibility by acknowledging that their actions in a previous lifetime may have caused the negative interaction or situation. And I'm sure those of you out there, spiritual warriors, aspiring spiritual warrior, or just spiritualists, or interested in your spiritual life, understand karma, or studying it and getting more information. He gives an example of an Indian gentleman who was extremely offensive toward Srila Prabhupada. At one point, Srila Prabhupada said that he must have done something to that man in a previous lifetime, emphasizing through his humility that one does not honor the duality. The Bhagavad Gita says that a sadhu or a saint does not become the enemy of his or her enemy, which means that even if someone steps forward to act as an enemy, a sadhu does not accept that position in return. He quotes here from the purport of text 22 to 25 in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14. It says, he, the transcendentally situated person, takes everyone as his dear friend, who helps him in his execution of Krishna consciousness. And he does not hate his so-called enemy. He is equally disposed and sees everything as an equal level, because he knows perfectly well that he has nothing to do with material existence. This world is not our home. Everything in this material existence is temporary. And even this so-called enemy, his body is temporary and will be gone. Once we accept a person as our enemy, it means that we must now try to destroy him or her. Consequently, we become like that person. But as we honor the presence of God and remove ourselves from the center, then we do not feel attacked, and we do not have to respond in such a negative way either. We can continue absorbing ourselves in love and devotion while glorifying the Lord, instead of allowing such distractions to capture us. Now that's difficult to do, because sometimes that negative energy coming is so powerful. But that's why we have to apply the positive and gain the knowledge first of all, and work with that knowledge, imbibe it and apply it in our everyday life. And as we did when I think we did short-term goals back some time ago, and we set goals, small goals, that as I'm practicing this and experience this, the next time somebody says something, blah, 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 I'm not going to let it affect me. And then begin to work on ourselves and get ourselves out the way. What I use as a point of reference for myself, and sometimes in talking to people when they may be upset or somebody said this or called them that, I go back to chapter 2 in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna tells Arjuna, you don't know the difference between the material and the spiritual. And he begins telling him about the spirit and the spirit soul and who it is. And he says there, it can't be shot, it can't be drowned, it can't be broken. And I like to say, as we begin to gain the knowledge and understanding of who we really are as a spiritual, eternal being, then that spirit soul can't be offended. It isn't offended because it knows itself as a part of God and as His servant, and that's what we're here to learn. So as we begin to gain that knowledge, less and less are we grabbed by somebody else's bad behavior or harsh treatment of us. And then we can honor the presence of God in them that may not be showing at that moment, and definitely in us, because we've been glorifying, as he said, you glorify God and honor His other parts and parcels. And then you get yourself out the center Like, how could you speak to me like that? No, it's, oh, look where that person is. All right. What did as I would say, what in me brought that about? And it makes it much easier. And then we don't feel attacked, you see. And we don't have to respond in a negative way. We continue absorbing ourselves in love and devotion while glorifying the Lord instead of allowing such distractions to capture us. With sufficient mindfulness, a strong, positive, internal dialogue, gratitude, a sense of forgiveness, and the attentive observance and eradication of the enemies of the mind, a person will surely become distracted and the mind will become the greatest enemy. Let me read that again. He says, without sufficient mindfulness. I'm going to put without a strong, positive, internal dialogue, without gratitude, without a sense of forgiveness, and without the attentive observance and eradication of the enemies of the mind, a person will surely become distracted and the mind will become the greatest enemy. And we don't want that to happen. We went through that whole thing on the enemies of the mind. So we'll try. This is a long. Okay, what we'll do, I think I'll stop there and see if there are any questions, comments. No questions? No comments? Anybody there? Any familiar names, faces? Who's there that we know?
Manjesh, Dr. Patrick, Jennifer.
Wait, slow down. Who?
Manjesh.
Manjesh? Oh, is that from Canada? That's the one? Haribol, it's been a while.
Dr. Patrick.
Dr. Patrick. That name's familiar. Okay.
Bhuvan Mohan.
Bhuvan Mohan. Welcome. Happy you're there.
Jennifer.
Jennifer. Is that Jennifer from New Orleans? Did she answer? I don't know if I'm embarrassed. I spoke to Jennifer. Was it Jennifer I spoke to today?
And Lavananda.
Lavananda. Okay. I welcome all of you. I'm happy you're there. If you're there, then you're here. I've given quite a bit. If you don't have any questions, then I'll go on to the next area. No questions?
No, the Jennifer you spoke with today is the
It is. Welcome. Thank you for being there.
And then there's also Adi.
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 It's been a long time, Adi. Welcome back. Happy to know you're there. I forgot where you're located, but I remember you used to be there.
And someone named Catherine.
Catherine. All right. Welcome. All right, so let's see what else our teacher says. He says, seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary. Sometimes we also find it difficult to feel grateful because once the novelty of an experience wears off, we settle into patterns and then the mundaneness sets in. Yeah, spiritual life should be an exciting, ongoing experience. However, if we understand how the residents of the spiritual world think and live, we can gradually develop those qualities by imbibing that same nature. In the spiritual world, every meeting and interaction is a fresh exchange. Listen, can you imagine every day you get up and you greet whoever's there and you go out and it's a fresh exchange. You know, not, oh, there's that guy again. Oh, that's right. No, it sounds so exciting. We can carry a greater sense of gratitude into our relationships if we can also treat every interaction like a first meeting. A first chance to serve. A first chance to appreciate. Or a first chance to associate with that person. And I think today we're so busy rushing, doing time schedule, this and that something like this, of this attitude, this gratefulness that whomever you meet, even if you know them and you've known them for a while, but treat it as if it's the first time, and that you can appreciate the association at that moment. That's exciting. By maintaining this mentality, we will not begin to take each other or the other aspects of the devotional culture for granted. If we see every exchange as new and fresh, we will feel much more ecstatic as each experience unfolds. We can improve the quality of our spiritual relationships in this way. When we gather to take darshan or read together, or engage in bhajan or singing as a group, we can appreciate the association more by reflecting on it as new and fresh. Even those of you who may be students, if you, when you go to school, so many are in college and are struggling and trying to make it to pass the test, to get the thing, to get the degree, to get the job, to get more money, which is a part of our life process. But just think if each day you went in to the classroom and you saw it as a new and fresh experience, and your classmates or even your teachers, fresh and new experience, you can appreciate that association, and maybe that lesson will come through clearer because you're not taking it for granted, or it's not, oh, I have to go sit in that class again. No, I'm going to go and have a new and fresh experience. Now, I'm thinking back to when I went back to college. I can't quite remember that attitude, but I wasn't getting this kind of knowledge at the time to understand the benefit of that. We do not just want to make any type of impression or a good first impression, but we want to relate in a joyful, compassionate, comprehensive, fresh mood during each encounter that we have with others. And you know the response you'll get back. You'll enliven people, alert people, and bring out in them that same attitude. He continues, after we accustom ourselves to certain patterns, we will begin to accept them as ordinary. The arti or religious service, the Bhagavad Gita class, or the kirtan will begin to seem like any other ordinary activity. We will also start to see our association as ordinary, considering that the person is just my wife, my son, my husband, my daughter, my spiritual director, or my God brother, we will minimize their ultimate identity as eternal spiritual entities connected with the Supreme Lord. Isn't He taking us to a higher level of consciousness? Isn't it why we're here, to raise our consciousness and to function at that higher level of consciousness? This type of mentality distinctly indicates that we lack gratitude. Oh, it's you again. Rather than, hi, hey, it's good to see you. You look great today. How are things? What's wrong? I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for being here. I'm thankful to see you. There's a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Just let me finish. Hold the question. When we think in this way, we will become cynical or critical while minimizing those things that can free us from these diseases. By maintaining this mindset, we will block off the potency of a powerful spiritual practices or associations. And we don't want to do that. Yes, you have a question?
This is my question.
Okay.
I was thinking, like, a lot of what you're saying is like ideal ways of thinking and feeling and experiencing perhaps confrontation and difficult situations. So as an aspiring spiritualist, I would think it's very difficult to kind of like swallow my pride or what I really want to say to a person, or this kind of
that's the practice.
natural kind of responses or reactions to moods or awkward situations or confrontation. So what do you
I'm saying, because we are studying as spiritual warriors, that's why I read the thing about spiritual warriors not conventional. And he doesn't act in a conventional, he or she, in a conventional way. A spiritual warrior has different weapons than the ordinary person. Why? Because a spiritual warrior has been studying, has a desire, first of all, a desire to be more spiritual, to really know who he or she is as a spiritual, eternal being. And if we're reading the scriptures and we don't get that, Bhakti Tirtha Swami in his books keeps bringing us closer to that. So as you begin to grasp, gain this knowledge, and listen and hear and apply, it's not easy. But if you decide in your mind with a desire, as you say, it sounds ideal. But as I have accepted what I read in scripture and Bhagavad Gita, it sounds like, oh my God, will I ever get there? But I trust the scriptures, and if it says that's possible, then it's possible for me. And what I have to do, I have to follow the instructions given there and apply it in my life. Once we have that desire that we want to get to that so-called ideal situation, treat people in this way, act in this way, see God at the center, get myself out the center, that Supreme Lord who is within everybody's heart begins to give us the opportunity to practice, like teacher in school. You go in the class, you get the syllabus, and you know that you want to finish this class, go through this class, complete this class, and you really want a good grade. Because if you get a good grade, you may get a scholarship to go to college or what have you. So you're going to pay attention. And the teacher's going to give you tests every 2 weeks or every week to see if you've gotten what you're supposed to get, or if you understand what has been given, so that you can advance. And your spiritual life it works the same way. But we're getting the highest knowledge, and the Lord is there. So it's not to see it as ideal and I can never get there.
Or unnatural.
Or unnatural. What you're hearing that seems so ideal is the natural way of life and living while we're here, to prepare us for when we go back home, back to Godhead, or even just function as he mentioned here, how a sadhu functions and not see the enemy as an enemy. So yeah, it may sound ideal, but again, it takes me back to when I first started studying. And I would hear and I would read the qualities of this, even in Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna, Arjuna would ask a question, and how does this one do? And Krishna says he does this. And I would want it. I would say, oh, that's how I want to be. That's what I want to have. And I never doubted then that it could happen, because I'm reading it. And it increased my desire to want it. And as I said, the opportunities would come. Somebody would say something that, ooh, hurt so bad. But what I found myself doing was beginning to ask, what in me brought that about? And I would write. Mostly I would write. I didn't confront. I would write. What I have found as I mature and get a little stronger, and I see how the Lord reciprocates and learn my lesson, I will, if a situation seems a little fuzzy now, I would say to somebody, have I done anything to offend you? Have I said anything to you because it just seems, you've taken distance, or you're not, I'm courageous enough to do that now. And sometime you'll find out. You may have looked at someone and was really not even looking at them. You were looking across the room and saw something's going to fall or break, or somebody was going to get hurt doing something, and you made a face. And then you turn back to this person and they thought you were making a face at them. So some people are very insecure within themselves. But if you are practicing and imbibing these qualities, that's why we went through 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior. It's so important to bring you about to reach a higher level of consciousness. So it may sound ideal, but it's the natural way for us to live and to function while we're in this material world, especially in this age of Kali, of hypocrisy and quarrel. So practice these things. Don't push anything away as, oh, I could never do that. Why? If you're being told this is a program to bring it to your attention and giving you something, try it. What is that? There used to be a commercial. Try it. You may like it, because you'll see a difference in your life. Okay? Okay. Anybody have any other questions, comments? Okay, it's time to close the show for tonight.
Bhuvan Mohan says he offers his obeisances and thank you.
Oh, thank you everyone for being there. And please, don't, when you turn off your computer, try not to turn off what you've heard. If there's been one word, one phrase, one idea, one concept that you felt some response to, I used to call it my soul is hearing something it wanted to hear. Take that with you and experience this week. What is your attitude of gratitude? Our next section is going to be attitude is crucial. So we are dealing with that attitude of gratitude. See how it works for you. How often can you say thank you in a situation that maybe before you heard this, you might have responded in a different way? Try it. You may like it. I bid you all good night. Hare Krishna.